be here. Thank you. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our business, the Brooklyn Grange, and how it started and where it is now, and then a little bit about agriculture and the green roof industry. So we have 2 rooftop farms, as Andres, I believe, said, although I didn't have my headset on, and it covers 108,000 square feet, or about 11,000 square meters. We grow a multitude of different organic vegetables. We hold events, and we also green the city in other ways. In terms of my career, I studied industrial engineering in the Midwest and moved to New York and started working in a financial company. And I was a casualty of one of the statistics that Stephen had mentioned earlier when he said that I believe I was spending 87% of my life in a building. And it was a bit challenging for me and for my personality. At one point I had requested that our business start to compost our vegetable scraps and organic materials, and I was rejected. And I had to start composting in my desk drawer. And I realized quickly that it was time for me to move to a different job. And I grew very interested in agriculture, which was in many ways a very practical application of exactly what I had studied. So in 2000, let's see if the clicker works. In 2009, I left the office job and started working outside, and we started a 6,000 square feet or 600 square meter farm in Brooklyn. It was funded by the landlord, and it was kind of the first of its type that was a green roof system with agriculture. And it was a great success. However, it had not proven many of the fundamentals of finances and whatnot to really see if we could make this a financially viable system. You can see the general layout of this from Google Satellite with efficient rows and growing beds and walkways. So we looked at the revenues and all of the numbers after one season and analyzed what types of crops were successes and which types were not. Grew probably 70 to 80 different types of crops, all the different mixed vegetables. And after we figured out how much we could yield in a given square foot or a given square meter, we looked at the potential to scale it. So what if there was 6 of them? Or what if there was 10? Or even 20 or more? What was the potential for growth, and also what was the point at which we actually necessitated a certain amount of scale in order to survive? So we found this space in 2010 and set about fundraising to green it. And we found a landlord, which was a challenge to find a landlord that was interested in signing a long lease and putting £1 million of green roof on top of their building. We raised funds through a few different channels. We raised some loans. We had a Kickstarter campaign. We had several events. And we also sold equity in the business. About 20% of the business was sold for capital. And a few months later, we installed this space and we started the first farm. And this was 4,000 square meters. You can see the same general layout, fit for agriculture, very efficient, constantly attempting to minimize the amount of space we walk on and maximize the amount of space that we grow on. 2 years later, we started our second farm in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I wanted to include a brief bit about the financing here. You can see that about 75% of the farm was funded by the Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP. And that is one of the grants also that Stephen was mentioning in New York City. They have a few $1 million available per year for reimbursements for green roofs. And then besides that, it was funded with our business and with the landlord. And we started this space. And we signed a 20-year lease on this space, which was important financially in order to continue to make investments and build on the agricultural practices as time goes on, because it's very difficult to go from 0 to 100 in just 1 year, or even 2 or 3 years. So this is another traditional green roof, and this audience knows green roofs well, but I just want to remind you that we did not, we took the existing infrastructure and existing research that had been happening for decades with green roofs, and simply what we did was modify it for a commercial production, for agriculture. And believe it or not, after 7 years, we're still evolving it. We're still working on soils, we're still working on water holding capacity, nutrient holding capacities, weight, all the same issues that are happening in the green roof system, industry, we're still working on. Here's a side shot of it so you can see the side profile. The beds, just a little bit difficult to see around the wall. The beds are about 1 foot, or what is that? That's about 35 centimeters high, where we grow, and then these walkways are just an inch or two above the drainage mat, or above the drainage system. And the thought, practically, was that we have a finite amount of soil and media that we can put on the roof, so we're going to walk on a minimal amount, and then we're going to grow much more, as much as we can, essentially, within the bounds of two things: budget and weight. Here's another shot. This is very recent. You can see a lot of greens production, and we'll talk about all of our crops soon, but that these salad mixes and salad greens, including different mizunas and mustard greens and arugula and lettuces, occupy about 45% of the area of the farm. This, if you can see the circles, this shows the distribution radius. We sell about 75% of our crops to restaurants and groceries. We refer to that as wholesale. It's the most consistent channel for our sales. The other quarter or so of our produce goes to 2 farmers markets and a CSA program. I don't know if people know CSA, that's become a term in the US. It's a prescription system where people pay in the spring and then they receive a weekly bag or box of fresh seasonal vegetables from the farms with what's in season throughout the summer. It was invented by some rural farmers, I think a very, very inventive and very good thing for our agriculture program in the long run, especially in the US. Because if you think about in northern climates where it's frozen through the winter, the spring is when you resume your production. And typically you have not had a lot of cash flow, you have not had a lot of sales or revenues for a while, and your only resort might be the bank or credit cards and whatnot. And this was a very innovative form of lending, not quite interest-free because the equivalent of interest is a little bit of a surplus of vegetables, but a way to support small regional farms and then slowly get the money back in terms of vegetables throughout the season. So this radius that we deliver to, you can see those are circles with 5 miles. That's about 8 kilometers. That's the maximum that we would deliver, and we sell most of our food through Queens in this area, Brooklyn close to this farm, and a little bit in Manhattan. And ironically, that is about the exact same radius that our bees will fly, 5 miles, if they are hungry. Here's a shot of one of our farmers markets. You can see a multitude of different produce across the whole board. Oh, someone was taking a photo. Also a look at our salad mixes and some branding that we have when we sell to grocery stores, so we can continue to put the word out about our operation. Carrots, cherry tomatoes of different varieties and colors, and also different varieties of cucumbers. You can see one interesting one up here. That's Armenian cucumber, very tasty actually, and surprisingly easy to grow. And peppers, lots of peppers, they are very successful in our climate. And next you see events, another critical, an important part of our operation in order to achieve the revenues that we require in order to keep up with our rent and our overheads, and also as good entrepreneurs, a way that we found to expand that was already in place. We already had this beautiful space, and we realized that people were very excited to come up. We have about 10 weddings per year, and you can see they're a little bit difficult and creative, but very much worth it. People stand there for the ceremony typically because there's a nice view of the city, and then they go into this center area you can see a yoga class happening on Monday night, and we can set up tables there as well. So it's a very versatile space. And we also use this center space at this farm for many other things, for educational workshops, children's groups, gathering spaces, lots of different things. It's a very busy place. These were two improvements that we made this past year. We planted a green wall along the northern skylight, which was just a membrane, and we also built an awning because historically we've been renting tents, and this is a nice way to keep out the rain, obviously, in the center here. Also critical to our operation is our impact on the community. We have obviously some environmental benefits with the green roof in the city, but if you're not interested in the social benefits of urban farming, then I think it should be done in the country. So we have a lot of different people that have come up for our training program. We've trained many different young people on organic, small-scale, efficient agriculture, and they've moved around the entire world to start different projects. And we also have some partnerships with a refugee program that helps out refugees that are asylum seekers who have come to the country under stressful terms. And we've had over 20,000 children up on the farm since we started 7 years ago. And it's also super important. I think many in the room probably understand why, but also in the US, the agriculture system is very disconnected. And in the cities, we are a long way from our agriculture system. And it's important that our young people and our future consumers understand this and have an idea of where they want to spend their money and the activism that it might take place in order to make sure that they can maintain healthy lives. A couple other examples of other greenery that we've done in the city. We've installed a few miniature versions of organic rooftop farms. We've also, this was a planting that we did at ground level. It was just simply a clover field, a temporary field as an exhibit, as an art exhibit, but they came to us and asked us to do it, and we said sure, although we wished it was permanent, but the value of land right there by the Brooklyn Bridge is very, very expensive, so that would not be possible on private property. And then this is a green roof that we installed at the Vice Media headquarters, which has about 2,000 square meters. It's a large green roof, and it has a section with vegetables. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we're finding that is a very much seems to be a positive way to install green roofs, with some sections that are extensive or intensive and very much passive, and then other smaller sections that can be actively managed with vegetables in case there's not a business or organization like ours that wants to farm it commercially. We also have bees, abejas. We have about 30 beehives across the New York City. We have about 20 in Brooklyn and 5 in Manhattan and maybe 6 or 8 in Queens. I know that doesn't add up to 30, sorry. But that's important revenue for us, and also branding. It strengthens our company. We can make a couple thousand, maybe 2,000 or 1,500 jars of honey each year. And there's very high demand in New York City, in the United States in general, for local honey because of the health benefits and the effects that it might have on allergies and whatnot. So people are very interested in the honey. And also it has become a major focus of education. We do a lot of workshops on beekeeping, and there's a lot of interest in that, especially with some of the research that's out on colony collapse disorder. We also make a sauce, a hot sauce. That's my baby. I've been doing that ever since I spent 87% of my life in buildings. We make a few thousand bottles of that with our peppers. And here's a quick little diagram. But if we don't sell them all at the market, we can puree them, bottle it, and then it's now a shelf-stable, something we can keep through the winter and sell. We also have chickens. They're primarily for the educational purposes, but they also sort of complete the ecosystem on the roof. Animals are very much a part of all agriculture through fertilization, decomposition, composting, everything. So it's important that we have some livestock, although it's a small component. And then composting. It's an opportunity in an urban system to have a channel to take our waste. And we've partnered with many different companies through the years. We collect chocolate husk, spent coffee grounds, vegetable matter from other restaurants, sawdust and wood shavings from furniture makers that are in our building. Many different things that we can get, prevent them from going into the waste system, decompose them, create compost to rejuvenate our nutrient. This is a forced air system that we created a few years ago, under construction, but it's finished. But this supplies oxygen and aerobic conditions for the microorganisms in this box and saves a lot of labor and time and whatnot. Here's another picture, unfortunately, with some birds. Our compost. But it's also important to remember that it's not always so nice. In New York City, we have cold winters, and that's a time that's challenging for farmers in that environment. And we've figured out those additional revenue streams in order to help with that, because you still have to keep paying rent through the winter, etc. So we keep our greenhouses heated, and we are looking into a little bit more scaling of our greenhouse areas. And we keep them warm, and we grow microgreens and some other crops that we can sell throughout the winter. How are we? Here's a picture of some of our winter crops, the microgreens. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to show it as a demonstration of the importance of crop optimization, especially in this environment. Ever since the first year that we began this agriculture system, it's been very, very important that we keep very good records and look at the values of our different crops. And for people in the room that are not in agriculture, you might be surprised to know that the difference between growing cucumbers in 1 square foot or 1 square meter of space might be, you might be able to grow arugula or a salad mix or one of our more profitable crops, and you might be able to make 5 times more money, which has huge amounts of practicality and influence in terms of the scale that we're growing at. So it's very important that we optimize our crops, but also at the same time you might be wondering, why don't we have a monoculture? That is also not really within our ethos with this project. With all of our education, the organic principles that we have, we don't just focus on 1 or 2 crops that make the most money. We still grow 40, 50, maybe 60 different types of crops, but we allocate different percentages to them across the farm in different areas, and also it helps us with making decisions about how we spend our time. This is a presentation that I've done with some of our training programs, where we look at the tomatoes, and we analyze the value of the red tomatoes versus the beautiful colored cherry or the heirloom tomatoes and the cherry tomatoes, and look at the yield difference. Because believe it or not, even looking at this metric of dollars per square foot, you can see a little bit lower number there with the heirloom tomatoes. And those are our favorite ones to grow. They're the most beautiful, and they also have the most demand. And they also get a higher price. So it was very interesting to figure this out in the winter, when we were able to slow down a little bit and realize that the yields were actually much higher on some of the other ones. So we made some adjustments and have figured it out. Another very, very important aspect of efficient small-scale agriculture is tools, and something that we've been working very hard on, and working with other farmers, not just urban or not just rooftop. This is an example of one of our seeding mechanisms, which was not around a couple decades ago. It's sort of a new invention, but a very efficient way to get seeds into the ground. This is a battery-powered tilling machine. It has a lithium-ion battery, so it's quiet, and it can charge for hours, and we can use it for cultivating and weed prevention and soil moving and different forms of our needs. And then this is a very innovative new product also, just a year or 2 old, automatic for harvesting salad greens. It runs off of a drill, as you can see in the photo, and it runs automatically, and the blade spins and makes a harvest. A couple technicals, just as we wrap up this section. You can see a nice before and after, and also sort of see the layout of the beds and the crops and the way we've designed the farms and worked around the obstacles. The first farm, this is